Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the live stream. So, just in case, tell me if the sound is okay. And Ichiriki is playing really quickly today, which is unusual. Means he's probably in an opening that he's researched. Let's see. Let's move this one over a bit. Oh, very good. Okay. The sound is okay. Thank you, Sandy. Hello, Chris Davis. Hello. Okay, so looks like Ichiriki is playing an opening that he knows something about because he's playing very quickly and he looks pretty much even. So let's just go through all the moves here. It's so quick. Okay, let's see. All right, so I'll back up a little bit. Yes. So this is something I've seen a number of games played. So black can play the jump here. The jump sort of depends on a ladder. So for instance, if white pushes through and cuts here, if the ladder is good for white, then it's generally not so good for black, even though the corner is alive. It does depend on whether there's some fantastic ladder breaking move, but otherwise this is going to be good for white if the ladder is good. But of course, in this case, it's not good for white. So white cannot do this. In this corner, now if white plays the jump, it's going to be a bit more tricky. So the ladder in this case, for the time being, it's good for white, I guess. Yes, so this is something white could do, but I've never seen anyone do this one. It's probably a bit tricky with the ladder breaking move in the lower left. I haven't actually researched that. So white plays this slide, and white does get to play this big move towards the corner. They were both fairly quick up to this point. This is maybe a move that Ichiriki researched. Otherwise, he wouldn't be playing so quickly. And time trouble is an issue that he has had in the past in international tournaments. For instance, in the Ing Cup, where you run out of time and you have to buy it with points, and actually you have to pay komi for the time. He ran out of time and used up a lot of his points to get it, so that was bad. Yes, thank you, Michael King. So yes, so he invaded here. This is unusual. Like usually you would expect black to play some kind of preparatory move and then invade on the next move. So he's sort of setting it up in advance. White usually answers here anyway, but maybe he was afraid it would change somehow. For instance, if he played this variation first, maybe white was going to do something more like this, which might be a bit more challenging for black, this kind of a fight. So maybe there's some reason to having played the invasion first. And Leonardo was mentioning the attachment that was so much in the conversation yesterday. Attachments like this, quite a similar place on the board, actually. I don't think he wants to play it in this board position because black is trying to make use of that stone that invaded the right side. So white plays here and plays away. Yeah, so the upper left is really big. The lower side is big too. So for instance, this is another move that would be fairly normal, somewhere along the side here. And he immediately plays here. So this is something that black can do. And he managed to connect up. In itself, it's not such a big move, but he does have some potential to move out with the stone at P11. So white very tightly answered that. So white's playing very carefully here, but it seems to be going according to plan for black. And black stands here. So this looks like it's a fairly good opening for Ichiriki against ShinJinseo. KJ was commenting about yesterday's game that he couldn't find any mistakes, outright mistakes from ShinJinseo, even in the computer analysis. So it was almost inhuman perfection by ShinJinseo in that game. If you listen to KJ. And so yes, so this is the board. Let's back up a little bit and show you the moves. So white played away once more, and black is trying to attack these stones. And when this group in the lower left comes under attack, playing the hane and the hanging connection here, this is a shape that you see a lot of. So in the game black played here, when black does that, white does get the hane in the corner with sente, so a kind of an I shape there on the side. On the other hand, if black plays hane underneath, white will choose a time when white has a good ko threat and play here. So if white can win the ko once, then white will have that mark stone on the second line is useful for white. So for instance, when this kind of stuff happens, white has good shape moving out into the center. So black's not going to play 5, but you can see how that stone on the second line is working to improve white's shape. So black plays on the outside, and now white has to choose how to move out. So I would be sort of expecting a peep on the 4th line. Or white could be, for instance, this way. This is something that would be on my radar at least. This is a forcing move, and black would answer it either here or here. Otherwise, white pushes through. Aha, but wait a moment. Maybe this stone that black played in the center of the board at M11, that's a ladder breaking move. So maybe black has researched up to this point and is planning to play here, in which case if white pushes through and cuts, it's going to be a ladder. So these forcing moves this forcing move that black played in the center of the board is pretty useful in this case. So in this case, white would maybe have trouble making use of that stone, and black would be able to cut it off with something like this. So if white doesn't like that, maybe white has to prepare a little bit more. Something like this, for instance. And then white could, let's see. White could probably play here now and push through here. So in this case, it's not going to be a ladder anymore. And this kind of thing, it's a different story. Black could capture here, but this would probably be okay for white. I don't know. It is about, let's see, how big is the territory? It's 28 points, close to 30 points. So maybe it's big. As far as shape is concerned, black has sort of used up a lot of stones. But if we count the number of white stones inside there, it's 6 stones. We can take away most of the black stones. Yeah, so it's probably an overly efficient territory. So if white can't do that, maybe white has to do something like this and connect up like this. So this would be, black would be pushing white around a little bit in this variation. Okay, let's see if there's any chat that I should be. I wouldn't say the right side is over-concentrated. White had to capture that black stone to feel safe, I suppose. But it was a good exchange for black getting a little territory. How do I evaluate F3 and G3? Oh, yes. Well, it depends on how happy you... So that's a good question. That's Yan Zhang. And how do you evaluate those? So this is an interesting point. Let's get back to the game. When white plays a move like this is f3, and comparing it with g3. Now this would not secure the corner, so it's a lot easier for black to jump in here later and make some trouble. Or black can play here. In this case, something like this, black would be breaking out into the center. Something like this, black would have some potential. And actually, AlphaGo does it different usually. But for instance, this is the old joseki where black can live in the corner. And I won't go into the complicated variations I've seen sometimes with AlphaGo. So there's more room for black to do something there. In some cases, this is just going to be dead. So basically, this kind of situation, locally there's not enough room for black to make two eyes. So it's locally dead. Or if black plays here, it's generally, white can choose which side to do this, but it's generally going to die. So this shape here, black does not have enough room to make two eyes. White's connected up, and it's just the one cutting point, and so it will be difficult for black to accomplish anything here. So this is just locally, it's dead. And so the knight's move, it's easier to make it territory. So we used to say that white is supposed to play the next move here as a diagonal move, because this has a more secure grasp on the territory, but it's not so common now. Computers seem to be happy with the knight's move here. It's closer to the side. And then Yang Zhang was also talking about a move towards the side, towards the right here. And as someone else commented, it's not prioritized so much with computer programs nowadays. It's maybe not so big. So it's more normal for black to be playing this attack in the lower left, I'd say. Okay. Okay. I just missed your question, Thumper. It was a lot of chat and moving quickly, so yeah. Yeah, definitely not in the conspiracy, though. Okay, so white played a two-space jump. That was sort of unexpected. So with this, white, if white crawls next on the second line or something like that, white will be alive. Oh yes, the Android question, yes. ShinJinseo is so strong that people are comparing him to a computer. Yes, I think that I've heard that said. Okay, let's see. I'm caught up with the game. So white's trying to make a base. And for instance, let's see. Let's see a living shape for white. So if black plays something on the outside here, and we say white doesn't want to move out, white can play here, and has a forcing move here, which might not be necessary to play it yet. But in this case, white has one eye on the fourth line here at e16, and one eye underneath. So that's one way white could have lived locally. And if black instead takes away white's eyes, the marked white stone is giving white a solid connection there. So white's probably going to find some way to move out in the center. Black hasn't finished surrounding the lower side, so that's something that black will have to come back to later in the game. Fine Art was suggesting J4 instead of L5. Is that I5? I'm not sure. Okay, let's get back to the game. J4 instead of I5. Okay, so yes, so that's this knight's move. And that sort of makes sense to me because if black plays here, then the side is, for the time, it looks like it's going to be a black territory. Whereas in the game move, there's a weakness left behind. So black has played in the upper right corner here. White answered it. But the lower side is not finished yet. So that's why I would sort of hesitate to play that move up on the 5th line. Makes sense. Yes, I agree with James said that it makes sense. And Doris Cowling is asking, would I be willing to bet against Shin nowadays? And like, even at the start of this tournament, I was sort of saying that ShinJinseo was my favorite. And there was a point where there was just the one Korean player with 2 Chinese players and 2 Japanese players. And I was still sort of expecting ShinJinseo to do fairly well. I was a bit worried about that during his game against Miyu Ting, which was kind of lucky for him. So that was his big chance to lose. But of course, I'm a Japanese affiliated player, so I'm sort of rooting for Ichiriki here also. Mm-hmm. Michael King is asking about the upper left once more, so I can go into that variation once more. It's okay. Invading here, it's something that black can do at some point. But for instance, AlphaGo in the master version was confronted with positions like this position that white has in the upper left. And I don't recall it jumping into the 3-3 point. This is something that human players have been doing. Locally, it's not alive. Black does have some aji, of course. So it depends, like if there were a black stone here, then suddenly there would be some aji with the potential of pushing through and cutting here, and it would be a bit more, there would be more potential. And so there's ways that black can make use of it, but the way I saw AlphaGo playing it was AlphaGo would play here and here. Locally it's just dead, but would be playing something like this, and then white has to play something inside to kill it. And then black would be making use of forcing moves like this on the side. So this is one way that actually can be done. It's something that AlphaGo did in similar positions. So at least the local position is the same. And the direction of 7, it sort of depends on the board position. So like if black cuts on this side and goes down this side, then black's going to have some potential forcing moves from this side. So there is some stuff that can happen. In some cases, you will see players be starting from the second line. Sometimes this works better, or the second line here. So if black can get, if black can get a kind of a nice combination here, ideally black can get into the corner. So sometimes black is playing on the second line and sort of connecting it up with potential moves on the side. So black does need some kind of helpful black stone in the vicinity to actually make it work. And there's a lot of ways to try it. So the human way to go about it is usually just to leave it for a while and wait for some good idea to come up in connection to a move that you have played in the vicinity. So you really need this stone at 5 or something like that to make it work. And so it depends where black plays the stone on the side, and how black will deal with it. But that said, that's something I've seen a lot in human games. And again, I have to say that when I saw AlphaGo make use of it, AlphaGo was almost always playing this sequence, which is dead when white bumps against it at 2 and 4. But black does have a choice of directions, so to play some forcing moves. So that's my summary of what could happen in the upper left corner. And it's Ichiriki's turn. Actually, up to this point, ShinJinseo seems to be using more time than Ichiriki. So ShinJinseo seems to have used about 20 minutes, whereas Ichiriki has only used close to 15 minutes. But he tends to use a lot of time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he catches out fairly soon. Okay, Regis Cridlig is asking, what does aji mean? That's actually, people use the Japanese term a lot, partly because it doesn't completely fit in English, but the closest word that I would use would be potential. So it's when you have various ideas, and like if you say there's a move left behind, or there's some potential life left behind, something like that, then that's a more strong potential than we usually call aji. So when it's aji, it's just the direct translation of that word is taste in English. So it's just a trace of potential, which is not actually real. It's just something that you can, depending on how the game develops, you can make use of it. So actually, although you say it's a newbie question, it's actually pretty deep. Okay, I wonder if Michael King is asking about the position in the upper left corner where black sacrificed some stones to get some forcing moves. Um, it's not really an opening tactic, so I think Michael King might be trying to compare it with a gambit in chess, but it's more like a local tactic. So it's maybe if we're comparing to chess, it would be closer to a sacrifice play. Despite all that, yes, Rick. Despite all that, AIs tend to prefer the double Kama, just because of the stronger hold on the side. So the potential aji in the corner doesn't seem to bother them very much, and it's sort of hard to get a straight answer because sometimes they don't even try to kill the corner, and somehow it works in the overall position, and it's something that we don't always completely understand, even as professionals. Mm-hmm. Yes. Leonardo put it well when he's saying that the failed corner invasion sometimes is a way to set up some forcing moves, some free moves around the sides. So yeah, that is the idea. So in that way, it's kind of like a sacrifice play where you're setting up an attack in chess. Okay, so this is probably the move that Ichiriki wanted to play when he was playing that knight's move at I-15. He wanted to surround the lower side on a larger scale. Okay, that's a good question from a Korean friend here. Sorry, I can't pronounce the Korean phonetics, but KJ felt that ShinJinseo was stronger than AlphaGo, and so he's asking, has ShinJinseo reached the AlphaGo Lee version? And the AlphaGo Lee version was the one that beat Lee Sedol, and that's why they're calling it the Lee version. And it was the first AlphaGo version that we actually saw. Actually, it did play Fan Hui, who was a kind of a sort of retired Chinese pro who was living in Europe. So that was slightly earlier, but basically the Lee Sedol version was probably just a more advanced form of that. And so when we looked at the opening, there was not really anything. If we compare it, for instance, with the master version, the opening is not very remarkable. There's nothing all that new. It was just that shoulder hit that I did a triple take about. But apart from that, there was nothing so special about the opening. And so it's conceivable, but because his opening is certainly, I would say it's probably better because he's researched, for instance, the opening that he played against KJ. He probably researched the whole thing. So a lot of the opening was something that was within his repertoire that he got from a modern neural network. So all of them are better than the Lee Sedol version of AlphaGo. That's sort of far in the past at this point. I wouldn't know about the AlphaGo Zero version. That's completely a different thing. Or even the master version, although it originated from using human data as it kind of as its egg where it started. Even though it was like that, the neural networks were much superior. I believe the weights, you might call them, were much superior to those of the Lee Sedol version. So while all these programs look superhuman, the Lee Sedol version of AlphaGo looks it almost looks human. Okay, so this is a move that is sort of bothering me here. I was waiting for white to play that. Okay, so to start with what white did in the corner here. So white played here, kind of a probing move. If black answers on this side, then black's going to be losing something towards the corner. So white has, even if black plays this way, let's do it this way, which is, in this case, there's only one way to take advantage of it, I think. Right. So in this case, white would probably cut here and can capture these black stones. So this is already a capture. It's a bit more tricky if white cuts here. So this is something... there's going to be something coming out of this one also. But maybe it's a bit more complicated. The simple way to do it is just to cut here and capture 3 stones. So that's why black answered on the right side here. So, and then the game move here. This is taking advantage of a weak point in black's shape there. So if black covers, then white can cut here. And let's see, if black plays from this side, white can just connect underneath and capture. So if black plays from the other side, black is actually winning here, but there is some potential to be playing some forcing moves. So for instance, if white plays here and black captures these stones, then white will get a forcing move here. So this is going to be a lot of profit towards the center of the board. So that's some extra profit there. And of course, white would be able to squeeze from this side too. So it would be easy for white to make a living shape. So otherwise, if black answers this towards the center, then now white's going to, this is going to be a ko. So something like this. So it's going to be a ko on the side. So there is some potential for white to capture those black stones. Okay. All right, Longing Cat. Does anyone have a link to a list of games in the tournament? I'm sure they're all over the internet. You should, yeah. Not offhand. I'd have to search for it. Okay. Scoob is asking if they consult AIs in the Japanese 2-day tournaments, and they're not allowed to do that. So not that I know of. They're not allowed. Right. Rick Rubenstein has handled that question. Very good. There's no rule limiting toilet breaks. No. Opening theory presumptions that computer Go is disproved. Well, no one plays the, I shouldn't say no one. The openings like the Chinese opening, the ShinJinseo, there's a lot of openings that involve playing after two corners playing towards the side, and people don't like to play them anymore because basically the corner moves, the corner enclosures are considered to be bigger by almost all computer programs. Okay, the white group in the lower left seems vulnerable and unproductive to me, and white's handling it right now. So we'll see that spelled out in the game, I suppose. Oh wow, Chris Davis. Do the Japanese players actually eat the meals published by the hotel venue, or is it just publicity? Actually, I think when they talk about the menus, it's usually newspaper reporters because, like most of the Japanese domestic tournaments, are sponsored by newspapers. So it's usually the reporters who are reporting what they actually ate, or maybe someone doing something on the YouTube sometimes. They have a YouTube channel for the Japanese Go Association also, so that kind of coverage. Um, Sometimes I wouldn't be surprised if the hotels say what they fed the players, but I think it's usually the sponsors. Yeah, thanks everyone for staying up so late for this game. But of course, this is the final game of the tournament. Whoever wins, it's the final game. So yes, so this was supposed to be the dream team for Korea. They didn't do so well in the first part of the tournament, but of course they did have ShinJinseo. Um, so he's come to the final game. He has three straight wins at this point. So he started by beating Iyama, who also Iyama had four straight wins. So then ShinJinseo beat him and Miyuting. Let's see. Yoseiki and Miyuting. Yes. I lost control of the order there. So um, he beat Iyama. No, actually Miyuting beat him. So that's why I was confused. Okay. So he only has three wins yet. So he started by beating Miyuting, and he beat Yoseiki, and then KJ. Very good. Yes. So Motiennat, is that close to a correct pronunciation for that name? I don't really know. Um, he's talking about a Japanese YouTuber called Tsurunin Channel. Actually, two of them, and they're rivals. They're other professional Go players. They're very amusing. Hmm. Gang of Piano is asking of Plano is asking, the Japanese pros have a disadvantage of time control in these international games. Um, I think that could have been true a few decades ago, but nowadays the young players play a lot of quick games on the internet, so not true anymore, I don't think. It's a lot of cash, yes, but it's for a world champion. So I'd say like so as people are saying maybe it's about $500,000. Like just compare it with something like golf or something, then it's not such a big amount. Clomy Q is saying, is white winning at this point? Or actually, yes. That territory on up top looks hard to overcome. So there's a number of things to say about that. I'm not so sure white's winning. It looks fairly close to me. So that's one thing. Also, I wouldn't call that top side a white territory. So I don't even know what part of it is going to become territory at this point. But at least the side area is it's not a territory yet. And it's surprisingly difficult to make those areas into territory. So it sort of depends on how the players play it out more than how it is right now. It's not a territory yet. So locally, black has looks like black has captured there could be a kind of okay. Once white pearls there's no ko. There could be a kind of a ko there, but I think white's sort of heading towards sacrificing those stones. So yes, this is the same idea that I was showing before, only white started with the attachment. So here, so if black let's make a diagram. So if black plays an Atari here, black can break through, but white will be able to capture these stones. So in this case, white wins the race to capture by one move. So if black plays on this side, white will cover here, I suppose. And it's not a ladder, so white would like to be able to play on this side. But since it's not a ladder, probably doesn't work. Okay, Moten Nat is giving us a Katago score graph that says black 43% against white's 57%. So if it's below 60%, it's probably not more than a point or so, and it's not something that we would notice if we didn't have a computer giving us those percentages. So it's not a big deal. So even 70% is something that basically, I'd say it happens all the time, even at this stage of the game. So in early stages of the game, if you have a huge advantage, which is over 80%, then it's probably clearly bad for one side, even if a human player looks at it. But if it's somewhere around 70%, it's not something that we would have noticed before. Okay, let's see. Maxim Hranin, thank you very much. I got a big present from Maxim. Yes. Jack Singh is saying that KJ, he broadcasted, he does a lot of social media. So he probably tweeted or something. Or maybe the Chinese social media. And he was shocked by Shin. He was just like Shin was superhumanly strong, stuff like that. And he says stuff like that. That's the way KJ communicates with his fans. He gets a bit excited, and he does that all the time. Right. So yes, AI predictions can give you 99% if you're only leading by half a point, but that usually happens at the end of the game. So like if it's close to the end of the game, the computer program will be very confident that it's going to win, even if it's a half point difference, and it can give you percentages well over 90%, and in some cases 99%. Like I've seen it go up to 100%. As they were finishing the game. Okay, so black played one Atari and has captured the white stones. The weakness of this is that it hasn't saved that black stone on the left. So obviously white is going to justify that attachment on the top by saving that stone for once, yes. And this is going to be forcing. So it sort of depends on how black answers that. Now black took the four stones. So in this case, white still can push through on the third line and capture that black stone on the left. So white has that way of making two eyes. And so now white can just play away. Okay. Yeah. True. Yes. Do the H18 stones have a liberty? 3 liberties. Or F17 give more. If black had played a way to connect, if black had played in a way that connected the, that's actually sort of leading into something I wanted to talk about. So that's good. So, for instance, if black had played, so in a way that connects black up to that stone at F17, then that stone at F17, this connected position, it has 4 liberties. So in this case, and again, there's the fact that this ladder is not going to favor white. So if white then plays here, then black can play here. In this case, black is actually winning the race to capture. If white plays here, black can play... well, actually, there is a bit of a ko there, isn't there? So if black plays here and here, I guess there's a kind of a ko, a one-step ko. Or if black plays on this side, there's this ko. That's a direct ko. Or if black plays here to keep 4 liberties, then if white can get the hane here, this is probably going to be a bit of trouble. So this would be a kind of a step ko also. It would be a one-step ko. So there is something there. So it's not as if it's a perfect capture, which sort of explains the move that Ichiriki chose to play. But the drawback of this is that whenever white plays here, white can capture this black stone on the left. So white always has a way to make two eyes. Okay, black didn't want to connect up. So the kind of the honest move would have been just to play here, but he felt that was a bit too slow. So he's playing more actively here. So this is a position where white would sort of like to take advantage of a weakness in black's shape. But for instance, if white pushes through and cuts here, let's do that. If white pushes through. Well, if black plays here, white can cut. And it does look a bit cramped, but maybe white can save those stones. Or black can play here. Okay, so white did push through. So we get to see how black handles that. Right. White is being very active here. White did finish, as Jung Lee is saying, sacrificing the white stones on the lower side, which was probably going to be black's territory anyway, and reinforcing the group that's towards the lower left corner. with a potential life if white pushes through at g17. And white's out in the center also. So this white group is going to be, it's very close to being alive already. So it's going to be difficult for black to kill it, or even attack it, that is. And white has the initiative. So white started something on the left side. How wild a fight this becomes, it sort of depends on how black continues right now. So, like if black plays at c13 to cool things, this would cool things down. So in this case, white would not have any convincing follow through, and would probably be looking at moves like this or this. The lower side is pretty much finished. The top side is worth considering and stuff like that. Thank you, Gobaduk. Otherwise, if black plays this way, then maybe white's going to pull the stones out. So in this case, white does have, for instance, later on, white's going to be able to force black to live on a small scale here. So it's slightly painful for black to be adding a stone to the corner. So it's an asking move, I guess. Right, Jack saying Yang Dingxing wasn't selected, but I'd say that Mi Yuting was. I had studied his games in preparation for expecting him to show up at some point. Of course, he was the second to the last Chinese player, and he was in very good form coming into this tournament. So he had a real chance to beat ShinJinseo, I think. One of the few players who I could say that about. And KJ was in pretty good form. Not quite as good form, you might say, as Mi Yuting was, but he was the second in world ranking, so he was doing well as far as results were concerned. Right, they could have had a selection tournament. So they had two outstanding players, and to be frank, I'd be pressed to find to talk about players who have a chance to beat ShinJinseo. It's just very difficult to beat him. Okay, when black is covered on the third line, this sort of takes the pressure off of white. So locally, if white pushes through here, and we get into this, now it's going to be even more difficult for white to save these stones. So if white does something like this, this is just really painful. There's even a way black can capture them. But even if black doesn't try to capture the white stones, this is just going to be so painful, it's probably not worth it for white. The life and the Tsuji to capture the white stones is actually an empty triangle here, which creates a shortage of liberties. So this is actually a famous Tsuji where black can throw in here depending on how white plays 13. So if white plays 13 here, black doesn't need to throw in. In fact, throwing in this case would save white. So when white does it this way, black is just going to play this way, and white cannot save the stones. So we're just ignoring, there's actually some aji in the corner with moves like this, which could potentially expand white's liberties. So I'm sort of ignoring that part, but just locally. This way, or if white crawls this way. So there's these two options that black has. But in any case, crawling on the first line like that is going to be painful for white. So yeah, so white didn't do that. So that's how black was handling the threatened cut there. But it does give white a good position in the center, and black slow down on the second line. So white should be happy with this. Okay. So yes, um, I wouldn't be surprised if there was discussion about um, the values of a qualification tournament or a selection committee, and they've selected players for some tournaments also. And I think even in this tournament, um, selection is done for Japan at least. Sometimes they have to select because of the schedule that players have. Um, and so yes, there is some of that. But none of it is important to me as how the player is doing coming into the tournament. So, like, for instance, in the case of Miyuting, I think he was in great form as he was about to play in the tournament. And that's something that there's a lot of luck involved in that. Sort of like the Olympics, like they take 4 years to get into the Olympics. Sometimes they're not in their best form when the tournament actually happens. And the same thing happens with Go. It's just something that the luck of timing sometimes doesn't work in favor of a certain player. And that has a lot more to do with how well they do than stuff like their ranking. Their world ranking actually is maybe they're going to be taking players from the top 10, 20 players anyway. So it's not such a big thing as how they are doing as the tournament starts. Okay, so the local position here has cooled down a bit. In case you're wondering about a peep here, this is going to be captured. Maybe not. But yeah, but even if white plays here, then it's going to be captured. So it's not. It's something that black could try at some point. It's the only move that's worth aiming at for black. But in most cases, it's not going to amount to very much. So it's time to look at the upper side maybe. So for something for black. So black has something like 30 points on the lower side. Yeah, close to 30 points, I say. And close to 10 points on in the lower left corner. That's a minimum of about 7 points, but it can be a bit more. And black has about 10 points in the upper right. So that's, I'd say that adds up to something like 45 points. Just because the lower right corner is slightly less than 30 maybe in solid territory. And the left side is less than 10 also. So if we say those two add up to something like 35 points, then that's 45 points for black. White has something like 10 points maybe in this lower left area, a few points on the right side, and a few points in the upper right corner. So that's 20 points. Plus the upper side, which is either the corner or the upper side. One of those two is probably going to be territory. So white does have something like 20 more points. So that's pretty much matches what someone was saying here. Who was it? Oh, it's already scrolled away. But yes, I agree. So white has something like 20 solid points and something like 20 points in the upper left or the top side. So that makes it's looking like it's close before Komi. But black probably has a lead before Komi, but it's going to be difficult to pay Komi here. Yes, honestly, I was pretty impressed by Miyuting in his recent games. So I was researching KJ's games and Miyuting's games, and some other players, just trying to figure out who would have a chance to beat ShinJinseo. Because, and I was researching ShinJinseo's games also, of course. But I would say that I was thinking that Miyuting had a better chance, and the game he played he actually did have a lot of chances, especially in the one that was annulled. The first game was the more exciting one. Yeah, so if Miyuting couldn't beat ShinJinseo, then I have trouble saying who could. It's just he's an outstanding player. He always has been, and I think he's coming to a high point in his career right now. So it's just very, very difficult to beat ShinJinseo at this point. Okay, a lot of interesting input here. I'm going to have trouble keeping up. Okay, Alvin P., I was not doing seconding duties for the Japanese team. No, they wouldn't listen to me anyway. So if I had to face off with one of the players in this event, that would be interesting. I'd love to play ShinJinseo. Yes. But it depends on how you mean it, of course. Yeah, but he'd be a tough opponent, but I'd probably enjoy playing him. There is a national team set up, and it's probably working better in China and Korea. There's a Japanese national team also, and they study together. They go on they have study groups and stuff. Yes, ShinJinseo is scary. I think he has something. I lost track of how many wins he has against China. I think they were saying he has 21 straight wins against Chinese players in international tournaments. And that was before he played Miyu Ting. So if we sort of count out that game that was annulled, I think he's at 23 now, wins against China. For some reason, they weren't counting his wins against Japan. It could be there's not enough games to really make an impression there. Okay, so Sandy Barnes asks, what is Black thinking about? That's a very good question. So we're sort of finished with the lower side, and it's a point where the Black is going to start something new on the top of the board. And so he has, I mentioned some options of Black playing from the corner earlier, from the upper left corner. And I also would consider, so moves like this. So this would be a very human way to sort of ask whether White's going to play from this side or this side. If White does stuff like this, which seems normal, this already gives Black a ko in the corner. So when Black plays here, the only way for White to try to kill it would be to play an Atari, and Black can get a ko. So this would be a ko for life. And when it's going to be, when I was thinking it's going to be White territory anyway, a ko is a good result for Black. It's worth it. It's worth trying that. So playing here once, and it's dead whether White plays here or White plays here, but depending on which side White plays, the way the potential comes into play, it's going to be different. So sort of asking how White is going to try, and even moves like this can sometimes kill the Black group, but it's usually better, the suji for White, the tesuji for White is to play one of these diagonal moves. So White plays it on the side that White is more anxious about. So if White plays it here, there's less potential for this kind of move to be a forcing move. Or if White plays here, it's a bit more difficult for Black to make use of it from this side. So that's one of the things Black can do. But he didn't. Let's get back to the game. I didn't have time to talk about this invasion, but this is another way Black can do it. So if he was thinking that White would answer on this side, and he wouldn't have so much potential on the right. Then starting from the side is the other way, and this time in the corner, if black wants to stop white from getting this point, black can actually start from the second line. So there's some potential that black can start from the second line and sort of force this sequence where black does get some more potential on this side. It's still dead locally, but it could potentially be developing into some kind of a race to capture against one of the white groups. So this would be a bit of trouble for white, because black does have a forcing move here, which will allow the corner to live. So that was actually, I was lying when I said it wasn't alive. So this kind of thing can actually be trouble for white, and white might be handling that by playing here. And again, there's some potential in the corner. And an AI will probably tell you that it's not a big deal and just allow black to live on a small scale in the corner and capture the side or something. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the kind of result you get from an AI. Oh, okay. We're in this variation in the game, so we're going to see how it works. So I was close to what Ichiriki tried. Oh, but he didn't jump into the 3-3 point. So here, okay, so let's say what black was trying to do. Okay, wow. It's getting exciting. But just to show what black was trying to do here, if we say white bumps against here, and black plays here and here, this is also a case where black has this forcing move, and if white plays like this, black can then squeeze in the center. Well, black might do it just like this. And this corner is actually, it's a living shape. Even if black plays here, it's a living shape. So if black can force with the move at 10, black's going to have a living shape. So that's would explain why white answered from the corner. And black does have some potential there. So black could have bumped against. Black could have bumped against. And saved these stones on the side, something like this. But it's a 3-space extension, so I would be worried about this if black connects. And in this case, maybe black's not gaining so much towards the corner. That corner is actually expanded in size. So maybe not so good. So instead he played here. And of course, if white answers here, then black's going to break through like this. So that was the idea. So with this move, white has saved most of the... Okay. Yeah. It tends to jump ahead a little bit. So white saved most of the corner territory. Black has broken through part of the corner. And white's going to try to kill black on the right side. So yeah. So white's going to capture that black group on the side, the black stone, chase black out, and keep most of the corner. Thank you, Orban. Yes. I understand that it's late at night for some people. Okay, so black is sort of out into the center. To feel completely safe, I would want to play one more move. A white move at J16, J16. J16 is not dangerous at all. So that's an oversight. So just to answer that question, J16, black can take these stones at any point. So black would push through and then be able to capture at any point. So that was nothing special. Good morning, James. Okay. Urshian the Dwarf says he played this game on his parents' 90s computer, but never knew the rules. So if you want to learn the rules, you can go to my channel and learn them. So I'll put a I'll put a link. Let's see. So there's actually it's probably pinned up at the top. But if you go to my YouTube channel, you will find that I have a playlist called Beginner Lessons, and it starts with the rules. So yes. Actually, Tsuyoki 15, ShinJinseo, he does lose some games, but not so many this year. So people have beat him, maybe not in international tournaments, maybe in the domestic Korean tournaments. So. Okay, so black peeped and white connected on the top side. So the game is settling down to an end game, and it still looks like white seems to be a few points ahead. I would prefer to play with white. That black group in the upper left, it's probably not immediately about to die. So for instance, if white tries something, white has some issues also. For instance, let's see. So if white, let's see if I can make a diagram. So if white tries something like this, okay, it's black's turn, so yeah. So if white tries something like this, black does have a forcing move here. And black has various ways to try to break out. So for instance, black could play here and here. Oh no, let's do it this way. Black could play here. Let's do it carefully. Black could play here and here. And if white plays here, black can break through on this side. This would be good for black. Or just break through. So black can break through there. Or if white answers on this side, black can break through here. So that was, this time I made it out. So black does have some room to squeeze out. But, oh yeah, so I was going to say, I would feel safer when black plays a move like this and is completely out now. So not quite connected to the lower left corner, but it is sort of out in the center. Not so much trouble for black. Black does have to realize that fiddling with the upper side stone there at h3 could have a bad effect on black's group on the left. So black does have to be careful about that. Yes, counting TLS. It is rare to see Ichiriki's game in the endgame. It is sort of looking like an endgame, isn't it? Like there's not very much to do on the sides anymore. And the center has a number of groups sort of poking out into it, which makes it difficult to make any big territories in the center. Okay, Van Yuhen is asking how territory is being counted. Okay, yes. So I'd say that black has something like 30 points on in the lower right corner. So that's 30 points. And I'm counting about 10 points in the upper right area. So it's not as if I'm making an exact count here. It's just a kind of an estimate. And black has less than 10 points in the lower left corner. So it's less than 50 points. I'd say it's something close to 45 points that black has as far as territory is concerned. If we look at the lower left, the white group in the lower left, white can push through at G17. So if white pushes through there, it's actually more than 15 points. So if black plays there, white has less than 10 points. So I'm sort of estimating this area to be about 10 points. So we're going to say the upper side is white's going to swallow that black stone at h3 and make about 20 points on the upper side. So that's 30 points for white, 5 points at least with white's group on the right side. So let's see, 10, 30, 35 points. White has about 10 points in the upper left corner. So what did I? So black. I was saying that black has 45 points to 50 points, and white has, by my calculation here, that was 45 points for white. So it's pretty close before komi. And we have to, if we look at the center of the board, I would actually say that white has a slight advantage in the center, although it's going to be hard to realize anything from it, maybe. But white does have a fairly strong shape pointing towards the center in the lower left. And white's group on the right side is pretty much alive also. And white has a position on the top side. So black does have positions toward the center, but some of them are a bit further away, and black's group in the upper left is probably a liability still. It's not alive yet. It's not completely connected to the lower left corner, so it's still something that black has to deal with for the time being. It means that white might get a tempo at some point. Well, there was a Japanese player, Sakata Eyo, who lived in the 20th century, and there was a year where he had 60-some wins. Oh, I'm wrong. He had about 30 wins, I think it was, maybe in the 20s, and just 2 losses. So he had that was a pretty dominating winning streak that he had there, and he has records. I'm not very sure about those numbers actually, but he did have some large number of wins and only 2 losses in the whole year, as he was fighting championship matches. Yes, Zheng Yingli is a bit more conservative with white's territory, but it's not so far off. Alexander Begin is saying good night. Good night, Alexander. Okay, well, Akotis is saying, is this game being scored with Japanese rules or Chinese rules? And strictly speaking, it's Korean rules, but for all purposes, you can assume they're the same as Japanese rules. So it's counting the territory, and it's 6.5 points. So the size of the komi is the important thing, I suppose. So black here is threatening the peep there. Black is playing a very active move. In a way, you could say black is creating another weak stone when black already has a weak group in the upper left. So it would be perfectly okay for white to answer solidly by bumping against it from the right. So that would get rid of the peep here. If white plays away, the peep definitely is a potential problem for white. So if black peeps there and connects here, white's cut off in the center. So that's not only is it big as far as territory is concerned, it's cutting off 2 white stones. But it is conceivable that white would be trying to find something active, like something like this, trying to start an attack on black somehow. This is something that could be done, but it would be very dangerous for white also. Okay, Hitos is addressing. That's a question that I should be thinking about more. So, like, if I'm going to play ShinJinseo at some point, that's something that I would really want to know, and I would be thinking about on the way to playing him. What weaknesses or tiny cracks, lines of potential attack do I see to shake ShinJinseo or win a game from? And first of all, I think Ichiriki had the right idea when he was playing an opening that he had researched. So you have to stay in the game in opening, basically, because ShinJinseo has very few weaknesses, and he can take a small lead to the end of the game. He's very good at doing that. And so he's a very solid player. He doesn't make any obvious mistakes. And he has a very good grasp of who's ahead in a given position. And he knows the opening. So I would want to really know what I'm doing in the opening. That would be my first prerogative, I suppose. It would be the most important thing. And then I just have to hang in there. I would try to make an active game, of course, like Miyuting did in the first game. That is, he made a very active game. Okay, that was very solid. Scoob is asking, are there going to be any additional volumes of the AlphaGo to Zero book? And there's supposed to be, and we're working on it. It is taking more time than expected, so sorry about that. So what does G13 do that G12 doesn't? So if white plays this move, there are some issues with a shortage of liberty. So I don't really know how black is going to make use of it. But for instance, in a position like this, then for one obvious difference is that when black cuts here, black is threatening to attack those two stones. So that's one thing. Otherwise, so it's just the quality of the connection there. So for instance, even if black plays here, and at some future point plays here, then there's an issue with this side also. So if black plays here and pushes through, well, connects, and black can capture those three stones. So there's a difference in the quality of white's connection. Although bumping against, for the time being, it's a more active move against that black stone in the center. And that's why I was sort of suggesting it. Playing here, it just leaves no potential forcing move. So it's a more solid move from both sides. So there's pros and cons. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Right. Thumper says it in this tournament especially, I've been noticing Shinju, so at least he played very active and strong moves when he was already winning. And he made it work. So it wasn't overplays, I don't think. Black is definitely not connected yet in the black group on the top there to the lower left. It's not connected yet. It can be cut off. So it really, locally, it needs one more move to connect up. Hmm. So a game like this where if we assume that the upper side is going to be a white territory, it's pretty much mapped out, and it's going to be difficult for black to escape with that stone at h7, it's h3 that is. So if we assume black doesn't try to escape, so if we assume something like, okay, like that move, and let's just make a hypothetical diagram where it's something like this, and then white adds a stone to capture this. This would be, it would be the end of the fighting. There would be, like, even if black plays here, white can always live with something like this. So it's not as if the white group is, probably alive already. It's alive already. So white could even leave it. And also white has moves like this, which would probably help white make a life, an extra eye there. So it's not as if white has any trouble making eyes for this group. Okay, white played very solidly again. It's already heading into an endgame. So, like, there's no stones that can be killed. Or are likely to be killed, at least. So it's unusual to have such a wide open center with nothing to fight about. And games like this where you have a lot of open space in the center, the end game tends to be very difficult for strong players. And that's because on the sides, like, we know, for instance, that white is going to play, we know that black is going to play here. We know that white is going to play moves like this at some point. Or if black plays that move, black's going to play here. Black plays in this area. So we know what the shapes are. We have a lot of positions that we've encountered earlier in our careers. People just know, just looking at it, we know what move to think about in these various local positions. Whereas in the center, even though we've played hundreds of tournaments games, or maybe thousands of tournament games, that is, this center position is going to be unique. We haven't had the same board position. And all of those stones on the right, in the lower left, all of them have to do with what's going to happen in the center here. So it's kind of there's no experience value in trying to read out this position. You actually have to read out the variations and figure them out. So it's a different thing, and it makes the endgame more complicated, more difficult. There's a little fighting that's going to start here. But of course, it's the black group that is potentially in trouble. I don't see any trouble for white here. Okay, both players are running out of time. It looks like Ichiriki might be in overtime now. Oh, actually, ShinJinseo seems to have a lot of time left. Okay, Scoob is giving us the Nihon Kings, the Japanese Go Association's stream AI, which is probably Katago. And it says that gives ShinJinseo 96%. And black's group on the left here is not 100% safe. So, for instance, if we say that black answers on the right here, and white plays here, generally black would want to cover at this point. So if black cuts here, this looks really, it's just falling apart. Same if black plays here. Black is getting completely cut off. White might play once here first. And so this is looking bad for black. The shape move for black would be to play here. And the question is black connected here? If white just plays like this, then looks like black's probably okay with this. But white can push through once and then take here. So when white does this, otherwise if white plays here, it looks like black can break through here. I'm not so sure about this variation. Maybe it's okay. So white plays here. If black plays here, white can squeeze from this side. So that was bad for black. If black plays here, again white can squeeze from this side. So it is bad for black. So that's just bad for black. And it's not working. So this is an issue here. Black has to answer on the right. And so there's this stuff. It doesn't look like black can save everything. So like this would be bad too. So there's an issue with that hane there. There's still an issue with that hane here. Is black trying to reduce white's eye space, white's liberties? Okay, when I see this move, I think black is hoping to gain something from a race to capture on the top. So we'll just say something like this happens and black pushes through. And in this case, the Tetsuji would be to play here and here. And it's working. So in this case, it's working. Black wins. This is the Tetsuji at 10 wins the semi for black. So he could be looking at that kind of thing. Okay, white started from the center. So white has some, at any point, black cannot start with this move because then this becomes very strong. So black has to try to find a way to escape without using that, which would probably be here. And this is pretty scary already. It's scary for black. Okay, so who was it who was asking about a 96%? Bad Goblin is asking 96% probability, is that like a 3-point lead for pros? And the only answer to that is that it depends, because you can get that probability in the endgame, probably a bit later in the endgame than this, and it will sometimes mean that it's very close, but the computer is confident that when the game is close to the end of the game, the computer is confident that it can finish the game correctly, or at least when I say confident, I mean that the computer actually plays out variations, and towards the end of the game, they will all end in the correct result. So it will get a high probability of the winning player winning, and very few exceptions to that, and it will get a high percentage of a winning percent. Right, yeah. So Longing Cat is answering that in his own way. So a high percentage, like 96% early in the game, would probably mean a larger difference, or at least 3 points. And so it really depends on the type of game, like if it's a big fight, and it depends on a semi race to capture. Sometimes human players find it easier to read out than an AI does, because AIs aren't really optimized to read out semis, races to capture. So like when it's a race to capture that involves the whole board position, sometimes human pros just know. And it's something that doesn't work that way for computer programs. Let's get rid of my variation here and see if I can find any moves for the game. They probably play a few moves. Okay, black pushed through once. And so there's that issue on the upper side. Let's take a look at it once more, just locally. So say we have a black stone here, and black goes down. We'll ignore the fact that black is short of liberties on the outside. And if white plays here, black can play here and here. And yes, so black is going to win this local race to capture. So what actually happens is that white's going to push through here. No, it doesn't. Not that way. So white's going to play something like this, and it's pretty tricky already. So white would probably not play 2 even, but this is working because white can win. Oh no, he can't, can he? So let's see. So it's like this. If white connects here, so this was the move that allows white to win the fight on the top. Yes. So actually, the move filling from this side was the mistake that I was making in that diagram, because white can play an Atari from this side and win. Sometimes black can play here and here, And this would be a more dangerous variation for white, provided that this is not forcing. So there's an issue of, is it forcing or is it not forcing, which is an issue. So if it's forcing, if it's not forcing, then black can still attack like this. But it's just, okay, so let's see, what did black do? So black did bump against there, and white filled a limit. So white had to, so I was showing you a diagram where white played here, and black could make trouble for white with this move. So it was trouble for white. Or black could actually continue like this now. So this is going to be trouble for white with that that not being a forcing move. So actually, yeah, black would play here. So white avoided that by filling a liberty like this. And now white has captured those 3 black stones. So these 3 black stones, they cannot escape, because if black plays this, white can just capture like this. Or after the game move, white can still leave it. White can still leave it because if black plays here, white can also capture by extending like this, and it's still dead. So those black stones are captured. So white got a little territory there, and white can even leave it now. And there's some question as to whether black's going to get any territory attached to what he's doing towards the center of the board. So I would say now white would be thinking of a move towards the center. So it could be this move, or it could be this move. Those would be moves that sort of spring to mind for me. M3, that's actually a pretty sharp move, the SD. M3 is interesting. So if white makes a mistake, that's going to work. So yeah, so if black plays here and here, now black would be able to jump out here and escape. But in actual practice, white can play here and here. It's not really amounting to very much. Like there's this thing in the corner. It's not like it's a huge value for black. Black's losing points towards the center of the board. White answered. So that was a safe move. And we are in early Yosen. Okay, Without Hippocampus is asking, any hope that people in USA and Europe will realize that chess is inferior to Go and the popularity will increase there? Well, I have this idea I have about classic, should I call them, games? Board games that have lasted, even chess, it's lasted probably, I think it's over 1,000 years. And Go has probably lasted for, it's at least 2,000 years, but it could be more like 3,000 or 4,000 years. No one really knows. There was no written records back then when they started playing Go, maybe. And we don't really know when they started. So games that last this long are special. There's something in them that captures the interest of human players, and people just will not stop playing them. And so they've lasted thousands of years. I think there's a good reason for them to last. And I think that's true of chess, or Japanese chess, Chinese chess. There's games that have been around a long time, and they're still exciting and interesting. So I think the important ingredient here is that they're, first of all, like Go is a game that has the basic ingredients, the stones and the board. They're very simple. And like it's either a black or a white stone. I think they were chosen with the idea of the Chinese ancient idea of the two opposites, the yin and yang opposites, and just representing those two ideas. So they had white and black stones, and the board. So it's just this grid here, which is a very simple idea. It's very similar to that in chess, although they did have more human-like pieces, you might say. So it's a bit more complicated. But still, I think the fact that these games are sort of on the boundary of human intelligence, so they're complicated enough that we can study them throughout our lives, and they will still be challenging. So it's still challenging for me to play Go. And at the same time, they're not so complicated that we're completely lost. So we can have the illusion that we know something about it. And sometimes it might be an illusion, but we do know some things about these games that are valid and that have not been refuted by computer programs even. There's some of the common knowledge, you might say, which is actually valid, and it's still working. Yeah, Monopoly is heading towards 100 years. That's pretty good. Right, chess and Go. It would be a bit of a pity if they were solved. It's the computer programs that we have now are not designed to solve them. They're designed to find ways to win games, but they don't actually try to solve. They don't try to find the perfect moves. Basically, that's not a part of what they're set up to do. They're just set up to find good moves, which is a different thing. Okay, bagloads of Korean here. I don't understand it. Okay, so here, the black group in the center is still not 100% alive. Yeah, so that's black connecting there. And it doesn't have two eyes. So now it's important, what is important now is what happens to that right part of the board, of the center of the board, that is. They still have some big moves on the sides and corners. So let's take a look at the corners. For instance, this corner here, and someone was mentioning this kind of thing that could happen towards the corner. As I said, it's not such a big value for black because black's giving up some points in the center. So there's some stuff that can happen in this area. There are moves like this, for instance. If white answers, is that okay? It's not okay. So yeah, white would answer here. So there's moves like these on the side here, and moves like this one. Or if black plays, it would be this one. So there's these side moves. Black has played this. Sorry. In the game, black did play that diagonal move. So it was like this. That diagonal move at R9 was big. And now white is starting to attack the center. And so like if black gets two moves towards the center, if black gets to play both here and gets to play here, then black would have something like 10 points there in the center of the board. So that would be really big. And so at some point, white can actually wait, but like if black plays here, white can still get in on this side with moves like this or like this. So it's not as if it's going to be a black territory yet, but it might be worthwhile for white to be doing something like this to sort of attack black in the center there. Because you might note that all of black's stones in this area, like none of them are completely safe. White has a forcing move here, which is going to start to cut off black, and from that direction also. So white does have multiple groups to be sort of aiming at to hurt black, and it would be a pity for white if black managed to get something like 5 or 10 points there while saving these groups. So playing here in the center is probably pretty important. So let's go back to the game. Yeah, white jumped here. So that's what white is doing with this jump. It's not as if black is in danger of dying or anything, because black does have the option of pushing here, and this would usually connect black up on the left. So, but those would be dominant points. They would be useless moves, or maybe it would turn out like this. So connecting here is really painful because it doesn't add anything to black's territory. Okay, we're talking about chess engines now, it seems. They use neural networks. And Stockfish, I believe, was a program that was a strong program even before they had neural networks, but yeah. So yeah, there is a Leela 0 in chess also. Okay, Plixic is asking, do professionals have strong opinions about knowing what the best moves even for the first few turns? So people start with star points or 3-4 points, usually. And so it's not that people think that one or the other is best, strictly speaking. For instance, the best idea we can have of that is that we know that computer programs tend to like star points, but they don't really give a big downgrade if you play a 3-4 point. So it's a very subtle difference, and people don't worry about it very much, even strong top Go players. And so they generally play with it in sort of incorporated into what kind of game they want to continue with. So there's a whole opening strategy there that they think might be working against a particular their opponent, or that they like to play, or something like that. O2, yeah, O2 is a Tesuji. Okay. Yes. Is black losing points on the bottom. That's Cyphus asking that question. On the bottom, yes, well, white making an eye here. Let's just back up to see the white move. This move was worth a few points. So it obviously it's making a second eye for the white group. So it's in that way, it's a very solid move. And it's setting up an endgame sequence there. So black's probably setting up to play this exchange here. So on the side here, let's have black play some big move. So this is, locally it's going to be like this. And maybe, to simplify it, I would say it's something like this. So black has something like, in this variation where black has played at 3, black has 28 points on the lower side. So it's smaller than it was before. And black has less than 40 points, even if we add the left side, this side here. Black has a bit more than 10 points in the upper right. So black does have a total of about 50 points. And I'm not counting the center. I'm not sure who's going to get more territory in the center. So let's say black has about 50 points. Might as well count white's territory too. White has close to 10 points in the lower left. It's less than 10 points if black plays at 3. And maybe a bit more than 10 points in the upper left. I'll call that 10 points also. And something close to 25 points on the top side. So that's 25, 35, 45. And then 5 points, about 5 points for this white group on the right too. So white has about 50 points too. Oh, hi, Dusk Eagle. Dusk Eagle, thank you for the present. It's your support that keeps me going. Okay. It's interesting. It's something that's bothered professionals also. So Doris Catalan is saying he finds it curious that AI like star points so much, and then they like to invade at the 3-3 point. But they don't like to play the 3-3 point first. So it's sort of interesting, and human players can get annoyed when the opponent jumps in the 3-3 point. So sometimes some of us don't like to play star points anymore because the opponent is bound to jump into the 3-3 point. And so, yes. So we're back to the game variation here. It's quite similar to the variation I was showing you. But it is annoying sometimes. And so people sometimes decide to play 3-4 points to avoid that. But it's not true of computer programs. Thank you very much. SKEUPs. I'm not sure how I should pronounce that. I just found this channel. I'm on Twitch and YouTube at this point. So. No, when a computer chooses the star point, it means it's great even though the opponent might jump into the 3-3 point. And computer programs tend to, the score doesn't change even though the opponent jumps into the 3-3 point. So I guess it's okay. Jung-In Lee, thank you. Thank you for the present. And when there's an international tournament again, I'll probably be trying to do this again. So look forward to more broadcasts. Yes, Cyphus has a point there. People were telling me even weeks before AlphaGo challenged Lee Sedol, probably a couple of weeks before that, I was being told by computer engineers who were researching computer programs to play Go. They were telling me it would take a few decades before they could get to professional level. And AlphaGo was not professional level. It was more than professional level. So no one knows. W Zhang. So sometimes playing a 4-4 shoulder hit can be okay against the 3-3 point. It's been a joseki for ever since we've started having 3-3 points. But computers tend to either ignore it for a while or play a two-space approach against the 3-3 point. So that's what more usually happens. It depends a lot on the board position. And the AI doesn't care on which side you block when you've been invaded the 3-3 point. You can block on either side. And we used to say that would determine which direction your wall faces. But with the new josekis that we've developed with the help of AIs, that's not so true anymore. So you can get a wall pointing in a different direction, depending on how you follow up with it. Yes, thank you, Cyphus. You have to drop a like, and it does make a difference. And it really does, although I don't really understand the YouTube system completely. Somehow it helps. So drop a like. Thank you. AlphaGo was a big shock. It was a big surprise. Pretty amazing, actually. And it was a great opportunity to study. So when black plays here, white has a choice of bumping against it from one direction or the other. Yeah, so white played on this side. If white had played on the other side, someone earlier was mentioning that cut at O2, Q2 that is. So if white plays here and black plays here, this is something that can still happen in the game position. So in the game position, it's like this. This can still happen. If black plays here and here, that would break into the side. So white's probably going to play here or here anyway. And black can squeeze from the corner. It's just that black's not really gaining that much when white's going to get some extra territory towards the center. So it's not such a great thing for black. But if white bumps against this side, if black plays here, it's the same. But black can also start with the cut here at Q2. In which case, black can capture the corner without giving up this stone. So then black would be able to answer on this side. So that's a one-move difference there that black didn't spend in playing on the second line. Or if white plays here, now black can wedge. And this is a pretty effective endgame sequence where black is getting some extra points here. And white has to connect here to stop black from starting a ko. So if white played away, black would be able to make a ko out of it with this. So that's a kind of an annoying endgame sequence that black would have had if white had bumped on the other side. Okay. Sort of trying to squeeze in the center, it doesn't really work, but for instance, if white plays away and black plays here, black will be threatening various things. So like if white plays on this side, black's going to break through here. If white plays on this side, white has to worry about the liberties. White can maybe get away with this move. So it's not as if it's gonna immediately gonna die, but it is a kind of a tricky situation there. Gang of Plano, thank you very much. Thank you for the gift. Everyone's being very generous with me today, so thank you. Royal, yes, I do teaching games. That's the cue for me to push my my channel. I mean my Patreon page. So thank you for reminding me. So actually, I have a group of supporters who support me here. I've just posted the link. Oh, thank you, Doris Catalan. I have a group of supporters who support me here. So I put the link in both Twitch and YouTube. And you can support me there. On the top tier, there's a monthly teaching game on OGS. So that's a Go server that I use to give teaching games with a Zoom conference to review the game afterwards. So thanks for the question there. And yes, I do teaching games. So that's how you can get access to that. Okay, let's get back to the game variation. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Plixik. Oh, so black did cut on the second line. I don't think it's a huge value there for black, but maybe it's something that black can do. Philippe Fanaro, thank you very much. And oh, a foolish monkey. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Leonardo. Thank you for coming. Augusto Glez is asking, do I plan to invite guests to these commentaries? And I wonder which ones he's talking about. These commentaries here, I generally just do them solo. I'm not really that technical. Not so sophisticated in the use of YouTube. So I actually only recently learned to schedule my my live broadcasts so that people would know about them. So I'm still working on it. And it's easier for me to be doing it on my own. So that's why I'm doing it that way right now. Thank you, Icarus Must Burn. Yes. Right. I was on NHK a lot. Probably about then in the 19s. Thank you for remembering that, Jung Lee. Yeah, and I did some commentaries. I did some lessons for weaker players and a lot of commentaries at that time. The one thing is that Japanese pros, if they wanted to, if they were going to help me with my videos, they would have to come a long distance because I live in the boondocks. So yeah, not quite close enough to make it work easily for the Japanese pros. What is the worst move black could make in this position? Um, it's usually pretty hard to find a move in Go that would be better not played. So that's something I learned about chess actually, where you can have a position where you wish it was your opponent's move. That doesn't happen in Go. So just about any move is beneficial unless you just play it inside your opponent's territory. So like some random move inside your opponent's territory would probably be bad. So anywhere inside this white territory here, you have to be doing something like this for it to be 100% bad. Someone's asking, do I prefer tea or coffee? I drink both. So white has some territory in the center there. It's still looking good for white. Okay, white's captured that area. Let's see, where did black... Let's just back up a little bit so I can check the move order here. So it was like this, just to show you the moves once more. Okay. So black took the corner and white took the center here. Okay, so that was my move. Yeah. And white has added a stone to the center. So this is actually threatening black's group in the center there. Pretty soon black has to do something about it. So the various black groups do have some escape routes. So for instance, if black plays here, black will either capture these two white stones in the center or connect up to the left side. So that's one way black can escape. Or with this black group on the right part of the center, black can play here, and that would connect up to the right side. Again, this is a move that doesn't have much territory associated with it. For white, white can play here, and this black group in the upper left, it only has one eye. And it's not in a position to make a second eye there. So in this case, black would be cut off here. And this could be dangerous for black. This is actually going to be a ko. So this would be a ko like this. I don't know if I would go into this ko if I was playing with white. But it is something to think about. Without Hippocampus gave me a present too. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. I'm having a lot of fun, indeed, making Go accessible, more accessible than before, for non-East Asian language speaking people. So that's the whole point for my making videos. And I'm enjoying all the support that I'm getting. So thank you very much. Yes. So let's get back to the game. So black is gaining territory on... Oh, yeah. So this move was... it's indirectly saving black in the center there. So that was the point for that move. And black really has to deal with that group in the upper left now. So let's just watch for a while. And see how they... It's still looking good for white. It's probably fairly close. And at this point, I haven't been making any calculations for a while. So I don't really have a good idea of what exactly the number of the points are. It looks pretty close to me. But I'm feeling fairly safe that people were telling me 96%, and the sequence here doesn't look like white's losing anything. So it should be status quo. Right. There's no such thing as zugzwang in Go. You can pass. Your opponent can pass, and then if you pass 3 times, it's the end of the game. I think actually that might depend on the country. Quentin is asking about my tournaments. I do have a tournament game coming up on the 3rd of March. I make some reviews of my games, and they're still on my channel. So just in case some of you don't have access to my YouTube channel, I'll just make sure of that. So it's probably the pinned comment at the top of the chat. But just for people who just came, I'll put it in once more. So most of my videos are still there on my YouTube my YouTube channel. And a lot of game commentaries about my own games and stuff like that. Right. I like the way Leonardo puts it. There are always good moves in Go. There's almost always a positive value to a move that someone plays, because people don't go looking for moves that are really bad. But so it's a lot more difficult to play a bad move in Go. And almost all moves that have some reason to play them have a positive value. So there's no such. That's why I say there's no such thing as zugzwang. Um, Rick is asking, have there ever been an instance where pros passed twice and then made a move? Well, this rule about passing, it's actually pretty recent, so I wouldn't be surprised if the answer is no. But the point in the game where it would happen would be close to the end of the game, where one player would say the game is over, and the other would not say so. So that it's probably pretty likely that you could say one player passed, and his opponent played, and then he had to answer that. So that's what I would say is a likely thing. And I don't know about. I might have been wrong about passing twice anyway. I think they only pass twice usually to end the game. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're just looking at an endgame here, and it looks like white is ahead. Mm-hmm. Yes. Zhang Li. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Sorry about that. But yes, filling your own liberty is one of the worst moves you can play. So some players have actually filled their own liberty to put themselves in Atari. So that can happen. Very unlikely in a professional game. Playing on a losing ladder, that has happened also. And it has happened in professional games. So like there was one game where old man was playing against, I believe he was playing Cho Sonjin. So that's a player from Taipei and a player from Korea, actually. And they're both Japanese affiliated players, actually. They were playing in a title match. And let's see, I think old man was chasing a ladder and it was going towards this huge wall that old man had. So he just assumed it was right. And there was this lone stone that Cho Songjin had stuck to the wall, and it was breaking the ladder. It was sort of counterintuitive, I guess. Okay. So yes, we are coming close to an end here. And I would say white has a slight advantage. Um, it's probably going to be pretty close. I don't really know um, exactly how far white is winning. It just seems to be fairly close. But Cyphus wants me to show highlights, so I could do that. I would say it was the lower left area. So just to very quickly take a look at that. Um, I think when black added this stone here, um, investing one move, and white got to cut here, this whole sequence where white got a lot of forcing moves, played this forcing move, got to squeeze from above, get a strong position, and take the initiative on the left side. I think this is where the game started looking good for white. And white ended up with this position in the center when black is down on the second line. So I would say that my snap judgment would be that this black move must have been losing. This move here must have been losing something. And black could play away maybe or find something better to play on the lower side. Because this whole sequence, that move is not working optimal. And after this, it just looks good for white. It looks like white seems to have a small lead throughout the game. Although it's so close that if I were playing, I would not feel so confident. But they are finishing the game. So I kept that relatively brief because I did want to sort of keep with the game here up to the end. The Chinese pro who played ShinJinseo in the LG Cup, yes, and didn't fill the liberties correctly. So that was a super complicated capturing race that ShinJinseo was playing with. I forget, was it Jinseo? And it was extremely complicated. And so I made a video for that one, didn't I? I was a bit confused towards the end. So that was extremely complicated and really not surprising that the players could make mistakes in that race to capture. Okay, so up to the point where black was attacking white in the lower right, the lower left, that whole sequence on the right side of the board, I think it was researched by Ichiriki. So that's Steve Donnelly asking that question. I think he was probably within his preparation up to the point that he scooped out the right side and moved to attack white in the lower left area. And it was immediately after that that maybe he sort of got lost because that's where he went wrong. And he was playing quickly and he was playing moves that looked good. He seemed to be succeeding up to the point where he scooped out the right side. Okay, so black is linked up somewhere in the center. So that's what black is doing here. Everything is just barely connected. First of all, I'm talking about the black group in the upper left. So if white, so let's say black answers that. If white cuts here, black will connect up here. So black's linked up to the center here. And this side of the center also, it sort of depends, like if somehow white cuts this off, black can still connect up on that other side. So there are various directions in which black can connect everything. Each group, both this group on the left at 2 and 3 are Miai, so it can connect up one way or the other. And this other group that black has on the center, it's going to connect up one way or the other anyway also. Actually, black has something here, so it's not as if it's immediately in danger, but black does have this other direction to connect up to. So white's played here. Answering that is actually a pretty big move, so I'm expecting black to answer that. There's a potential ko here in the upper left, which could make a kind of a climax for this game in some cases. So that's something that I would be waiting for. Another big move is for black to save these two stones. That move is worth, it makes a difference of about 5, slightly more than 5 points. Okay. And the rest is all small moves now. Is the game already hopeless for black? Like, it depends. Like, things happen in any game. So there was this game that Muting was playing with ShinJinseo where the mouse failed to click and he couldn't play his move. And the time ran out. So stuff like that happens. People make stupid mistakes sometimes. And even in the end of the game. Okay. But yes. It looks like we have the game is finished now. And Ichiriki resigned, actually. So he was probably a few points behind. it didn't look like it was that big a difference, but clearly against ShinJinseo it would be very difficult to recover. So he resigned at this point, and the winner of the tournament is ShinJinseo, Korea, the Korean team. Mostly done by ShinJinseo alone, but yes. So he's a great player. I think it was a very exciting tournament on the whole. And I think maybe the climax for me was Mi Yuting's game, his 2 games against ShinJinseo, which were both very, very exciting games. And so thank you all for staying to the end. Don't forget to like the video and to sign up to my channel if you liked it and you want to see more of my stuff. And thank you all for the great support. And I don't have any schedule at this point for live streams in the future, but I will be looking for international tournaments, which is what I usually like to do. So I'll be looking for more international tournaments to talk about in my videos. So thank you very much. And I'm finishing now. And see you next time.